leaned back in his office chair, rubbing his tired eyes. Another night of endless deadlines had stretched into the early hours. The building was silent now, and the other employees were long gone. Outside his window, the city was a patchwork of lights shimmering against the inky darkness. Gathering his belongings, he locked up his desk and went to the elevator. His footsteps echoed down the deserted hallway, amplifying the oppressive stillness. The fluorescent lights flickered faintly, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to dance at the edges of his vision. When the elevator doors opened with the faint chime, stepped inside, pressing the button for the ground floor. The doors closed smoothly, and the elevator hummed softly as it descended. The ride was uneventful at first. I leaned against the wall, letting his thoughts drift. But as the elevator passed the 14th floor, it suddenly slowed and came to a stop with a soft ding. Frown glancing at the control panel. The button for the 12th floor was illuminated, but he was certain he hadn't pressed it. He hadn't seen anyone else in the building either. The door slid open with a quiet hiss, revealing a dim, shadowy corridor. First, the hallway appeared empty, but then noticed a figure standing at the far end. A woman, she was still as a statue, her long black hair hanging limply over her face. Her dress looked old-fashioned, flowing loosely around her frame as though it belonged to another era. She made no move to approach, but the next thing knew, she was stepping into the elevator. The woman didn't look at him. She walked to the far corner, facing away, her head slightly tilted as if listening to something distant. She didn't press any buttons. The doors closed and the elevator resumed its descent. Tried to shake off the unease creeping up his spine. He cleared his throat. "Late night," he said, his voice cracking slightly in the confined space. The woman didn't respond. She didn't even move. The air in the elevator grew heavier, colder. Eli's fingers hovered near the button, suddenly tempted to press open door and get off at the next floor. But before he could, the elevator jerked violently, throwing him off balance. The lights flickered, and the car came to an abrupt halt. The display on the panel read, "9th." The woman shifted slightly, just enough to make notice. Slowly, she turned her head toward him, her hair parting just enough to reveal her face. It was pale, too pale. Her skin almost translucent, stretched tightly over sharp cheekbones. Her eyes were dark and sunken, the irises barely visible. Her lips parted slightly, and when she spoke, her voice was a raspy whisper that sent a chill racing down my spine. "You should get off," she said, her tone devoid of emotion. The doors opened, revealing a pitch-black corridor. The darkness beyond the elevator was so thick it seemed to pulse, almost alive. Rose, his heart pounded and his chest swiped. "I think I'll wait for the next floor," he stammered, his voice barely audible. The woman tilted her head further, her mouth curving into a faint, unnatural smile. "You should get off," she repeated, louder this time, her voice carrying an edge of urgency. Before he could respond, he felt it, a presence out of the corner of his eye. In the farthest corner of the elevator, the shadows seemed to shift. His breath caught in his throat as he turned to look. There was someone else in the elevator. The figure stood motionless, taller than the woman, its outline blending unnaturally with the darkness. Its face, or what should have been a face, was the blank void, a featureless expanse that seemed to ripple like black water. Eli's legs felt like lead. He wanted to run, to scream, but his body refused to obey. The elevator doors began to close, shutting out the impenetrable darkness of the corridor. "No," the woman said sharply. For the first time, her tone carried emotion. "Panic? You should get off." The doors sealed with a soft thunk, and the elevator plunged into total darkness. The machinery faded, leaving only silence and the sound of Eli's ragged breathing. And then in the suffocating blackness, he heard a low, guttural whisper. It wasn't the woman's voice. It wasn't even human. The voice came from the shadowed corner where the faceless figure had been. It spoke in a language that it recognized, each syllable sending icy tendrils through his veins. The woman began to laugh, a soft, unsettling sound that grew louder and more distorted until it echoed like a scream. The elevator jolted violently, sending Sprawn to the floor. When the lights flickered back on, the elevator was empty. Both the woman and the shadowy figure were gone. The elevator dinged and the doors opened smoothly to the ground floor. Stumbled out, gasping for air, his legs trembling beneath him. He turned back to look, but the elevator stood empty, its interior calm and unremarkable. for the rest of his life, avoided elevators. And every time he passed by one, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching from within.